Shalom to our Israel Brief family, wherever you are around the world, from South Africa to Saskatchewan, from Zambia and everywhere in between. Welcome to the Israel Brief with me, Rolene Marks, brought to you by Lay of the Land. I had to think about that for a second. You see, I'm so entranced with you guys that sometimes I forget where I'm from. Nevertheless, you join me every Monday to Thursday for your top stories from Israel, especially now. Israel is busy with a war against Hamas, an internationally recognized terror organization. Today is day 172 of Israel's war with Hamas, and we can't forget it was started on the 7th of October with the atrocities. I was speaking to somebody earlier today who described it as a military massacre, and I think that's the perfect way to describe it. It was carefully coordinated. It was every nightmare from Jewish history all put into one operation in terms of the levels of barbarity and depravity. So let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin now at the United Nations, and a lot of drama yesterday at the UN. The United Nations Security Council voted in a resolution calling for a ceasefire. Now, the resolution also calls for the immediate release of the hostages, but does not make a ceasefire conditional on the immediate release of the hostages. The draft of this particular resolution, from Israel's perspective, we wanted the United States, our ally who has veto power at the UNSC, to veto the resolution. Instead, they abstained. Now, on Friday, there was a similar resolution that did link the ceasefire to the release of the hostages. That resolution was vetoed by Russia and China, who said that the language that it was written in was slanted more towards Israel. I mean, somebody please explain to me how calling for the release of hostages is too slanted towards Israel. Nevertheless, the USA abstained from this, which is breaking from their policy regarding Israel at the United Nations Security Council, which of course has upset many in Israel. Now, the reason that the US did this, they say, and this is according to their envoy to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, she said that because the resolution did not condemn Hamas, they abstained. Well, couldn't they have vetoed it? That's the question we are all asking here in Israel. The United Nations Security Council has yet to condemn the atrocities of the 7th of October. Yesterday, before the voting on the resolution, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that if the United States does not veto the resolution, he will cancel the proposed trip by National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi, Ron Dermer, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States and Security Advisor, as well as members of the COGAT unit, to meet with a team in the USA to discuss how Israel could deal with Rafah. Rafah is a bone of contention between Israel and the United States because the United States have said that they will not support a widespread incursion and that there must be other ways to deal with taking out the last remaining Hamas battalions in Rafah. Now, the White House have said that, they are quite surprised at Israel's response, and they kind of hinted that Prime Minister Netanyahu is almost manufacturing more tension or a crisis between the two countries. They did not elaborate why they thought that. They just said that they're very, very surprised and disappointed at Israel's reaction. Meanwhile, in a statement released earlier today, the Prime Minister says that the resolution gives Hamas hope that international pressure will push for a ceasefire without them having to release any of the hostages. And I'm of the opinion that Hamas do have the upper hand while they hold those hostages captive. Meanwhile, the head of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, is en route to Tehran. Read into that what you may. The resolution is non-binding. Staying with Hamas, and Hamas have refused the latest ceasefire agreement. Now, this must be, I think, the fifth ceasefire proposal that Hamas has refused. So for all those around the world calling for ceasefires and blaming Israel, it is Hamas that keep refusing all the options on the table. Now, an Israeli official has said that the reason that they refused it, they have put forward excessive demands with regards to the release of Palestinian prisoners with blood on their hands. Israel was prepared to release between 700 to 800 Palestinian prisoners, many of them convicted terrorists who have murdered Israeli civilians in terror attacks in exchange for 40 hostages. But now Hamas has refused that. Meanwhile, a small team from the Mossad negotiation team has stayed behind in Qatar to continue to talk to the Qataris and the Egyptians who are mediating these hostage negotiations. We have been speaking a lot about Shifa Hospital, and our troops are still operating in the Al-Shifa Hospital. And many of you have said, how come the Hamas terrorists were able to return? Well, we think for several reasons. First of all, they probably thought that because the IDF had already operated in the hospital and kind of moved on, that the hospital was safe. We know that the IDF exposed tunnels there, that the Hamas also thought that international pressure would enforce a ceasefire, which give them opportunity to regroup in the Hamad Towers around Shifa Hospital. Meanwhile, the IDF are exposing more and more what they are finding there. Yesterday, they found weapons hidden amongst the displaced people, amongst the patients on the roof, in the MRI machine, and in the maternity ward. I mean, it reads like a horror movie, but this is the reality. This is why we are saying we are not just fighting in response to the 7th of October. We are fighting. This is a war between good and evil. We are on the vanguard of a clash of civilizations, and what starts with Israel, what starts here, never ends with Israel. And we say that the West is next, and we saw what happened in Russia over the weekend. So all we can continue to do is to continue to pray for the victory of the IDF against the terror entity that is Hamas. And finally, the story has absolutely horrified me. You know, as a Jew, it feels sometimes like the walls are closing in, that, you know, is there anywhere that is safe? This story really shook me to the core this morning, and I want to thank the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom for actually making this the top story. 2 survivors from the Nova Festival, that is the festival that took place, the music festival that was on the border with Gaza on the 7th of October, where nearly 400 of the festival goers, including police, were brutally murdered, raped. Some were taken hostage into Gaza, but it was the scene of the most horrific massacre. 2 survivors who have started a non-profit to raise awareness and to raise funds for survivors, one of whom was actually a medic who tried to stay behind at Nova to try and treat the wounded, along with his friend, who also helped save many lives. They were detained by UK border police at Manchester Airport. And they were detained for 2 hours and questioned, and the border police reportedly said to them, "We want to make sure that you don't do here what you are doing in Gaza." Now, can you imagine being these two young men already suffering from severe PTSD? Your only intention is to tell the story of what happened, and this is how you are treated. According to reports, they were very, very subdued. They didn't answer back. And the Jewish community of Manchester has filed a complaint with Manchester Airport, who have said they are investigating. The Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has said that anti-Semitism like this will not be tolerated, and he calls for a full investigation. But it does leave a sickening feeling. We Israelis with Israeli passports, is it safe for us to even enter another country? Very, very frightening. Those are our top stories today. Guys, don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. We have so much content written by our I don't like to use the word stable, but it is actually a stable of brilliant writers. We are on Facebook. Our community is growing there at LOTLSite. So that's at LOTLSITE. If you haven't joined us already, join us there. Our YouTube community is also growing. Welcome new subscribers. And if you like our content, please subscribe by clicking on the red subscribe button and share. Invite your friends, spread the word, help get Israel's side of the story out there. And we are on X at Lay of the Land 5. I'm Rolene Marks for the Israel Brief. Guys, I leave you with a big hug. And as I always say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I will see you tomorrow. God bless.